Hello, wherever you are. So I want to welcome you to today class, and today we are going to talk about process costing, and specifically we are going to deal with work in progress. So make sure you also subscribe to this channel if you are watching the video, so that we keep on supporting each other in this process. So without wasting any time, let us do some discussion when it comes to valuation of work in progress and process costing. This is lesson 3. Actually, not lesson 3, but lesson 2. So this one is lesson 2 of process costing. So welcome. So when you talk about valuation of work in progress, what should come into our mind is how to value that value of work in progress. And remember, work in progress represent any item that was started but never completed at the end of a particular period. And that one will bring us to input material and material introduced. Now, input material is the material that is either introduced or transferred from one process to another. Now, raw material introduced in process 1 automatically will be transferred to process 2 after processing, and it will form the inputs of process 2. Same applies to process 2. So any item that remains incomplete in process 2 will be transferred to process 3, and it will form the input of process 3. And that's why I said and so on, meaning the process is repetitive in that nature or in that manner. Now, output of process 1 automatically becomes an input in process 2. That one we said in lesson 1, because we are in lesson 2 at the moment. Now, by nature, you need to know by nature, input is always 100%. So input will always be 100%. Now, material introduced, we can have inputs and in the same process, and we can have material introduced. So if we have inputs and we have material introduced, we don't mix them. We do what? We show them in a separate manner. Now, material introduced in the current process is the extra material that we need in that process. And remember, it is shown separated from input. Now, input is always 100%, as I said, but for material, it can be either 100% complete, or you may find it is not 100% complete. That one depends with the level of completeness. Now let us see the valuation now of work in progress. Valuation of work in progress. So when we talk about valuation of work in progress, now closing work in progress at the end of specific period appears as an opening work in progress at the start of the next period. And when valuing this work in progress, we are going to use two methods. Number one is FIFO method, first in, first out. And the second method is a method that is called the average cost method. Now let us see the methods, then we do questions. So let us see the methods, then we do some questions. Now we have two methods as we stated. So we have the FIFO method, and we also have the average cost method. Now for FIFO method, this one is based on the production that is completed is the one that were first brought in. So it assumes production is completed on the basis of first in, first out. Now in this method is applicable where costs are stable. It is only applicable where costs are stable, and also the opening work in progress will always keeps its identity. Will always keeps its identity. Now, for the average cost method, for the average cost method, now this method is applicable in a situation where costs are not stable or the costs are fluctuating in nature. Now, in this method, open work in progress will always lose its identity. So opening work in progress loses its identity, and the opening work in progress is treated as part of current production. And therefore, this method also uses the average cost to value the work in progress. Having said that, let us go to this sitting of May 2019. May 2019, question number 4. May 2019, question number 4D. May 2019, question number 4D. So remember to keep subscribing to my channel and share my channel to others so that they can also benefit at some point. So let us see the May 2019 4B. May 2019 4B. So let me read May 2019, question number 4D. That's on page 78. If you are using past paper of what? Don't know which past paper is who prepared it, but it's 4B. So May 2019 4B, you can open. Now the following information was obtained from the books of Mambo Yote, a manufacturing company based in Coastal Town, for the month of April 2019. So we have the opening in inventory, 50,000 units. Then the valuation, so we have material at 250, labor at 100, and overhead at 250,000. We have the units introduced, 200,000. Cost incurred, we have 1 million for material, wages to 750,000, and overheads 700,000. Then additional information, during the month of April 2019, 150,000 units were completed and transferred to process 2. So that is the output for process 1, which is the input for process 2. Then closing inventory amounted to 100,000 units. The degree of completion of material 100%, labor 50%, then overheads 40%. Then due to the nature of production, there were no losses. So in this case, there were no losses. The company uses the average cost method to value work in progress. Number 1, determine the statement of equivalent units. Now, before we determine the statement of equivalent units, we need to determine first the production units, and number 2, the normal loss and abnormal loss or gains. But in this case, we do not have normal loss, and therefore we do not have abnormal gain or losses. But I will show you the formula. We shall just do it, even if it is 0. I will just show you the process. So we'll start with the first step. We come up with production units. So we compute so we start with opening stock. So when we're talking about production units, so when we are computing production units, we start with the opening work in progress. We add. Now, what we add, it depends with the process. So if we are in process 1, we are supposed to add material introduced because there is no other process before process 1. But if we are in process 2, what we add is transfers from process 1. If we are preparing process 3, we add transfers from process 2, and so on. So if you are doing process 5, we add transfers from process 4. So let us see. We start with the So that is it. So if we go to our question, the opening stock, it is the first one. 4B, the first part. You can see the opening stock is 50,000. Now, because we were preparing process 1, we do not have any other process before process 1. So we just add what was introduced in process 1. So this is what I mean. So if we are preparing process 1, for adding, you add material introduced. If you are preparing process 2, we add transfers from process 1. If you are preparing process 3, we add transfers from process 2. And the process is repetitive. And the process is what? And the process is repetitive. Now in this case, because we are preparing process 1, then we add what was introduced. What that was 200,000. Then we raise closing stock. Closing stock is information number 2. Information number 2 of 100,000, you get 150,000. After that, now you compute normal loss. Now for normal loss in this case, it is different from lesson 1. When we introduce work in progress, how we compute normal loss will be different, because we have work in progress. But in lesson 1, how we computed normal loss, we were not including the production units, because we do not have production units. So we were just using inputs in lesson 1. But in this case, we move from inputs to where? To production units. So we say normal loss is the percentage of production. Now, if we read the last information, they said that information number 3, that there were no losses. So in this case, losses is 0. So there were no losses, so it is 0% times production units. Here is the production units, 150,000. It becomes 0 units. And then we need also to determine expected production, which is equal to production units minus normal loss units. So in this case, it will be expected production is 150,000 minus normal loss is 0, which will be the same as 150,000 units. Then after that, we need to compute abnormal gain or abnormal loss. Now abnormal gain or loss. So how do you compute abnormal gain or loss? So for you to compute abnormal gain or abnormal loss, you compare expected production with actual. So let us compare expected production. Our expected production is 150,000. You compare with actual or output production. So what's our output production? So for you to get the output production, go to information number 1. Number 1, during the month of April 2019, so 150,000 were completed and transferred to process 2. So meaning those were the output of process 1. So anything that was transferred to process 2 is the output of process 1. So I'm going to 150,000. 150,000. So you find the difference. Now in this case, the difference is 0. meaning there is no gain, no abnormal gain or loss. Now, if you want to know how to know if it is gain or loss, check lesson 1. So kindly check lesson 1 of process costing for you to understand if it's a gain or a loss. In case when in the situation where there is a percentage, the case where there is a percentage of what? Of losses. Now, if you have that one, now we can compute the statement of equivalent units. Statement of equivalent units as requirement of number 1. Statement of equivalent units. Now, but remember you're using average method. So remember this one is average method. So this is the formula. Total effective units. You take the complete units, you add effective units of work in progress, then you add abnormal gain, so you add abnormal loss. But if gain, you less. Now if you get gain, you less, but if it is loss, you add. Now I think we can proceed and now do the statement of cost. I think it will be enough in that part. So what you do, just say element of cost. So we have inputs kama kawaida, material, labor, and then overhead. I don't know if it is fitting. Yes, it's okay. So we can just draw a table. This one is the statement of units. So we start with the completed units. Now our completed units is the output. This one is the output. We call them the completed units or output. So for inputs is the same, 150,000. Then we go to effective units. Effective units of work in progress. Then abnormal gain or loss. Then total units. I don't know if it is visible. Yes. Now for completed units is always the same. This one 50,000 is always the same. So for completed units, you put the output, and it is always the same. So it is the same from input to overheads. Now for effective units of work in progress, remember it is for closing. It's supposed to be effective units of closing. This one is supposed to be closing. work in progress. Effective units of closing work in progress. Now, for this one, we need to compute. So for this one, we need to compute. Now, what is our closing stock? We have it here. Our closing stock, it is 100,000. Can you see what 100,000? So that is 100,000. That is our closing stock. But before we start filling our table, I want you to go to information number 2. Information number 2 says that closing work in progress amounted to 100,000 units with the following degree of completion. So material was 100%, labor 50, and overhead 40. But remember, I told you inputs from when we started this lesson 2. There's a point where I said that inputs is always 100%. Inputs is always 100%. So you start with that one first. So 100%, you multiply with the 100,000 units. This one. So you get 100,000. Now, if we go to the next item, material. Now, from the question, information number 2, material is 100% times 100,000. Also give us 100,000. But for labor is 50%. 50% times 100,000, which is 50,000. And then also labor overhead is 40%. Which is 40,000. Now for abnormal gain, it is 0 throughout. We were not provided with a percentage of completion. So for labor, not labor, sorry, for abnormal gain or losses, it is 0. Even if we have the percentage of completion, even if the first one input is 100%, 100% times 0, it is 0. Even if it is for material, it is maybe 90%. 90% times 0 is 0. So for abnormal gain, because already the figure is 0, everything will become 0. Now we get the total units. Total effective units. Total effective units. So we add together. So you add from the formula. Total effective units is equals to what? So add the total, for you to get the total effective units, you add completed units plus effective units plus abnormal gain or loss. But remember, if you find a gain, you are supposed to less. A loss, you add, a gain, you less. So let's start with the inputs, 150,000 plus 100,000 plus 0. So this one is 250,000. 150 plus 100 plus 0, that is also 250,000. Then 150 plus 50, 200,000. Then 150 plus 40, that one is 190,000. So that is it. So that's how you get the statement of equivalent unit. So that is the statement of equivalent unit. So we call it statement of equivalent unit. So that is for part A. So part A required us to compute the statement of equivalent units or equivalent production. Number 2, statement of cost. Let's go to the statement of cost. Statement of cost. Statement of cost. So as usual, so statement of cost, we start with the element of cost also. Element of cost, total cost, then total units, then cost per unit. So we start with the inputs. Material, labor, then overheads. So that is it, and then total cost per unit. Total cost per unit. Then total cost per unit. Then total cost per unit. So let's start with the first one, input. Now for input, it is 0 because we do not have cost for input. So input is 0. So you can see it here. Okay, we don't have it, so 0. But units for inputs is to 50,000. So 0 divided by 250, it is a dash. So we don't have that. So cost per unit is 0 because we do not have cost. So when cost is 0, then cost per unit will be 0. Now let's go to input material. So what is the total cost for input material? Let's go to our question back. So you can see we have valuation there. We have material to 50 and cost of material 1 million. So you add the two. So you add the two. So for material we have 2 items. To 50,000 for valuation and for cost of 1 million. So tupatia 1250 million. To 50,000. Our cost to our units, we have it here to 50,000. Then we divide to get cost per unit. Then for labor and wages, labor in 100, wages, labor in 100,000 and wages 750. So 100 plus 750. So we have labor stroke wages 100,000 plus 750,000, which is 850,000. Labor here, for labor is 200,000. Then the last one is overhead. Overhead. Now for overhead we have 250 and 700. 250,000 plus 700,000. This one will be equal to 950,000. 950,000. And then units for overheads 190,000. Now we can divide. So 0 divided by 250 is 0. Let me just put 0. Units, cost per unit, 1250 divided by 250, this one is 5. Then 850 divided by 200, 4.25. This one is 5. So add them together. 0 plus 5 plus 4.25 plus 5. You're getting 14.25. 14.25. Now we can prepare our process costing account. I think now we can prepare process costing account. So I will do it here. So let us see. Process 1. So start with the input. Now input, we have 250 units. but the figure is 0. So input is 0. So input is 0. Then we have material. Material units. For material units to 50,000. But the cost is 12. 50,000. 50,000. This one is fine. Then we have labor, or the wages, whatever you want to call it. Labor units is 200,000, and then cost is 850,000. Yeah. Then we have overhead. Overhead 190,000. This one is 950,000. So we have, that's the debit side. That's all about the debit side. So we can go to the